Will Trump concede?
He will be removed from office. Whether he formally concedes, that's, I guess, a definitional matter.
Will he run again? 2024.
Possibly. We may get the likes of someone else with the last name Trump running.
He basically got bitch slapped by sleepy Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Except you're assuming that those were legal votes cast for them.
If there was a real legal challenge, you would have real attorneys involved. You wouldn't have low-life Rudy Giuliani at a Four Seasons landscaping place in Philadelphia. I think the one benefit that Joe Biden has is he really probably doesn't care about being a two-term president. And so he kind of can just govern however the hell he wants to govern.
Right. He may actually decide not to run in 2024, depending on what the dynamics look like on a Democrat winning.
Law flip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down. Law flip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down.
Welcome to Law Flip. It's a conversation about law, life, politics, Biden, Trump, and everything in between. First of all, shout out to the legend, Alex Trebek. Jeopardy, one of the all-time GOATs. We're going to miss him. It's going to be hard to replace him. Big loss. Huge. Okay, so I'm Benji Smith. My partner and one of my best friends in the world, Louis Benowitz, is with us today.
Hello.
Okay, so usually we shoot early in the week, but we were captivated, miserable, agonizing over this freaking election. We just couldn't shoot. We couldn't do the episode. We had to wait until it was declared, and it was declared, and now we could talk about all the fun stuff. We're talking all things Biden, Trump, how this affects our clients, the winners, who's, hers, and so much more. Okay. Don't forget to follow us everywhere on social media at LawFlip, LAWFLIP, and subscribe to all of our mailing lists and call us 1-833-LawFlip. Lou, repeat it with me, 1-833-LawFlip. Okay, how you feeling and what's your general take?
Relieved that Joe Biden won and not so relieved that Trumpism was not resoundingly defeated.
I hear you. So, we're lawyers and we really value truth and facts and science and all these things. The past 4 years have been filled with bullshit, conspiracy theories, and my general take is a sense of relief. A sense of relief, Lou. Okay, so let's just go over a few things. Will Trump concede?
He will be removed from office. Whether he formally concedes, that's, I guess, a definitional matter.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever going to call up Joe Biden and say, you won. He will never accept that he legitimately won, but he will be removed from office one way or the other. Okay, so will he run again, 2024?
Possibly. I mean, that assumes that Trump will still be a healthy blowhard in 2024. Certainly possible, but he may not feel up to it. And we may get the likes of someone else with the last name Trump running.
How brutal was the last 5 days, or what, for Tuesday to basically what? It was yesterday morning, right? Yesterday morning. How brutal was that? I mean, I know for me...
And by yesterday, you mean Saturday.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, I was out of commission. I scrolled on Twitter so many freaking times. I could barely get anything done. How was it for you?
It was about the same. I mean, we were just waiting for nerds to pour through data and be able to say Pennsylvania is not winnable. Donald Trump cannot win Pennsylvania.
Right. Okay. So let's go through some winners, losers, and any other commentary. Biden. He's obviously a winner, but what's your general take on how he came through, how his speech was last night, or how on Saturday night?
He sounded like a president, which, given everything we've gone through, may be a low bar, but he fits within the paradigm of president.
You couldn't watch that and not be reminded of the stark difference between the low life that that was in the office for 4 years and just a rational, sane, relatively reasonable human being. I was struck by that, and it was touching, and there were some moments in that speech that really got to me.
And especially for those moments when this campaign was at its lowest ebb, the African-American community stood up again for me. You've always had my back, and I'll have yours.
The guy has truly been through so much in his life. He's had the greatest loss you could ever have, which is he lost a child 2 separate times. One time when he was at the beginning of his political career, and his wife, his first wife and child were killed in a car accident. And then his son, Beau Biden, who is like a military guy later in life, died from a brain aneurysm. And then he's just also ran and lost for president twice. And it's an amazing thing to see somebody go through all of that and then come out the other side of this. So yeah, he's definitely the winner. Trump. Okay. So I haven't been a huge fan of the Jim Carrey version of Biden on SNL, I'll admit. But last night or Saturday night when he revived his Ace Ventura Pet Detective, and he called Trump. It was one of the great moments in television history. Everybody's got to go watch it. But look, the guy, it's going to be very hard to make an argument that, that wearing a MAGA hat is for winners, because he basically got bitch slapped by sleepy Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's unimaginable. He literally set himself up for being the biggest loser in the world. Because
except you're assuming that those were legal votes cast for them.
I mean, okay, let's go straight to that. Have you seen any credible evidence that there is going to be a successful legal challenge?
No, because I doubt that there are enough of those Wednesday to Friday ballots in Pennsylvania to throw this whole thing off.
Yeah, I mean, the closest I've seen to a decent argument is that that somehow there were votes that were accepted that were by mail that came in after a certain deadline, and that somehow...
Yeah, and so what happened there is the Pennsylvania Supreme Court under state law ruled that ballots postmarked by Election Day and received by Friday were valid votes, and there'd been some U.S. Supreme Court activity where they had to keep the votes segregated. So theoretically, if you had a big enough pile of these votes that have been segregated to swing the thing, that would be Trump's best argument, because SCOTUS has shown some interest in that.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so many votes. There's, 130 plus million votes. So you would think there would be a chance for a little, fraud and abuse and things. But here's the thing. You have foreign leaders who have already congratulated Joe Biden. You've had all the media outlets call it. It's just a foregone conclusion. I don't see if and here's the big point. If there was a real legal challenge, you would have real attorneys involved. You wouldn't have low-life Rudy Giuliani at a Four Seasons landscaping place in Philadelphia.
Can we talk about this for a second? I mean, the outgoing administration really booked a landscaping company's parking lot instead of the Four Seasons Hotel.
Is that a real? So I've seen it. Is that I know that they ended up at a Four Seasons landscaping company in between a porn shop and something else. Was that actually intended to, is that actually what happened, where they intended to be at the Four Seasons, they ended up there?
That had to have been it. And what I wonder is if the people who own this landscaping company were able to take them for a ride and get Four Seasons level fees out of them.
I mean, everybody's getting money around them, so they might as well, So, okay. So, yeah, because you would have real lawyers. You don't have Rudy Giuliani basically saying we're going to go get him and there's all this illegal stuff. You see what happens in court. When you don't have facts on your side, you just make these general broad conclusions like this is illegal. We're going to overturn the thing. You don't see one person with an actual piece of evidence saying this is what's going to be, how we're going to turn this thing around. And you don't have any real constitutional, Supreme Court type lawyers involved. You have Rudolph Giuliani, who is just if he had any reputation left, Borat finished him off.
And even beyond that, the United States Supreme Court, now that the Republicans have been able to stack the deck on it, does not want to issue a controversial election ruling this year.
No, I mean, you don't get to the Supreme Court and go down with Trump and lose your entire reputation as a Supreme Court justice because of low-life Trump. And here's another point about how this is just one of the last money grabs for the grifters out there. all they're doing right now in the past several days is sending out like fundraising emails and text messages over and over and over again. They're literally hitting up everybody for donations. And in the fine print, what do they say that money is going for? They sort of, the pretext is that it's going to these legal challenges, but the fine print says that up to 60% of these donations can be used for repaying campaign debt. So how serious can they be about these legal challenges when they're using the money to repay campaign debt? It's a Donald Trump. It's so perfect. Everything that's happening is so symbolic, and
the worst thing about it is it's the lowest level donors who are going to give him the money from this. It's not going to be any of the wealthy ones who are still business people at the end of the day and aren't going to just go set more money on fire. These are going to be the most diehard supporters with the least to give who are going to end up handing Donald Trump money.
Okay, fake news media, how do they do this year?
Mixed bag. I mean, they could have put us out of our misery on this Pennsylvania call a long time before they did.
Why do you think they didn't?
I think it's a fear of Trump.
In what way? Like you just like if it was any other candidate, they would have just done it. But they were just so fearful of the rage that he was going to sort of promote on Twitter.
Right, to where they wanted enough ballots counted to where it became mathematically impossible, even though they'd seen enough of the trend line for several days before actually calling it.
Okay. And then I think the two most impressive people in the media were Steve Kornacki and John King. These guys were at the maps, like literally for 10, 12 hours a day, and they knew everything in and out. John King particularly, really smart guy. I like from Fake News CNN, just unbelievably impressive guy. He knew every single county, and he kept it together the whole time. Okay, pollsters.
They obviously don't know how to poll Trump voters very well. They always undercount them. There's margins of error, but this is twice where Trump has outperformed his polls. Trump got more than 70 million votes this time.
Okay, conspiracy theorists. I think that the conspiracy theorists out in the world are winners and losers. So they're winners because you see what's happening in these past, several days. Like, I am talking to people that literally think that that Biden is a pedophile. They think that there's election fraud, widespread election fraud. So they're winners. They're losers because they no longer have a president who gets to amplify those conspiracy theories. What do you think about conspiracy theories? How are they going to do going forward?
They're going to blossom going forward because Biden's been turned into a cartoon character for them. Same with Kamala Harris. So just as crooked Hillary took on a life of her own with Trump supporters long after the Trump crooked Hillary battle is over, so too will these people become mythical figures to Trump supporters.
Kindness and empathy. I think those two things have a little bit of a comeback.
Yes, although we will still see with this Georgia runoff coming up in January.
Okay, let's talk about Georgia, because people that don't know, Georgia is going to be the biggest issue for the next 2 months. It's November 8th. There's going to be a special election on January 5th, and set it up a little bit, Lou.
So in Georgia, unless a candidate gets in the Senate races, gets above 50% in the race, it goes to a runoff race. So both John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock, who are the two Democrats, wound up in runoffs because the Republicans they were up against, David Perdue for Ossoff and Kelly Loeffler for Warnock, neither of them pulled 50%.
And it's important to note, so it's just the context. The context is right now, if things were as they stand, the Senate is going to be 52 Republicans, 48 Democrats. And the significance of that is that they hold the Senate. So the Democrats are going to have a hard time passing anything with Mitch Turtle McConnell being able to basically block anything the Democrats want to do. If somehow, in a miraculous turn of events, the Georgia 2 senators swing back to the Democrats, it goes to a 50-50 tie. What happens in a 50-50 tie? In a 50-50 tie, if there's a vote in the Senate, what happens is the vice president, who will be Kamala Harris, will be able to break that tie. So, in effect, if the Democrats are able to swing back those 2 senators back to Democrats, they are going to basically run the table from president, the 3 branches of government, president, or not the 3 branches, the executive branch, and both the Senate and the House of Representatives. So, all that to say that the next 2 months are going to be absolutely jam-packed with a national, basically, campaign around Georgia. And just briefly talk about David Perdue and Ossoff, that race.
Okay, so Perdue is the incumbent. He has he ran anti-Semitic ads against John Ossoff.
He basically like ran a picture of Ossoff like with a bigger nose than he actually has, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, and then what was the great line that Ossoff? So in the second, so Ossoff and Perdue had these 2 first debates in Georgia, and because we obsess over this stuff, you and I actually watched some of the clips from it, and Ossoff crushed Perdue so bad in the second debate that Perdue actually backed out of the third debate. What was one of the lines that he said in the second debate that was so amazing that Ossoff said to Perdue?
It's not just that you're a crook.
I mean, is there any better line in a debate than it's not just that you're a crook? I mean, he said so much more, but that was just amazing. So what's going to happen is you're going to see a very big campaign around that race. And then with Loeffler and Loeffler, speaking of crooks, she's one of the senators that miraculously invested heavily in COVID PPE, personal protective equipment, at the same time that she was publicly, and all the other Republicans were publicly downplaying the virus. She invested in a bunch of PPE stocks and made a bunch of money. So that's who we're dealing with on the Republican side of the Georgia Senate debate. Okay. What do we have to look forward to in terms of winners, losers? Is the COVID crisis going to be taken care of in a better way or a worse way with Sleepy Joe?
From a top leadership perspective, the messaging will be better, but I don't see how much you could nationalize the response versus have it be at the state levels, which it has been so far. So
I mean, like, you're never going to be able, how are you going to control Texas from being completely out of control?
Right. Like South Dakota, for example, like Kristi Noem, like they're not going to have any sort of mask mandate that will ever be enforced in South Dakota. It doesn't matter what the federal government says. There may be some incentives the federal government could give, but Trump, because he never wanted to take responsibility, chose a decentralized response. You're still going to have to deal with that having been the response and Americans being culturally against mass and social distancing to a very large degree, depending on their politics.
You don't think that Biden's leadership on the issue and it's got to have a material change in what's going on? It can't get any worse than what's going on now.
I don't think it could get worse. It may be that the federal government, if the Democrats can get the Senate, can change the incentive structure surrounding COVID to where states will then, just because of federal monies, be able to say, yes, let's shut down this sector of the economy for some amount of time, trying to get case numbers under control or use some sort of other incentive structures. But you still just have the reality of COVID, which is a highly contagious virus where you have people who are culturally against the things that prevent its transmission.
Okay, employees, how is this going to change our clients' lives in terms of their work? So people say, why do you care about elections? They have no consequences to your actual life. Why does the fact that Joe Biden is going to be president, why does that change the lives of our clients who are employees?
As far as regulatory agencies go, so like the U.S. Department of Labor, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, agencies like that will have new people in charge of them and will likely interpret the law in ways more favorable to employees. You have the next layer of that, which is how is the reconstituted and more conservative Roberts Court going to address the actions of regulatory agencies? So this is multi-tiered, because whatever we have going on at the regulatory executive level or at the legislative level, we also have a 6-3 Republican Supreme Court now.
True. And okay, so what do we think about how our What do you think about the Lincoln Project? So Lincoln Project is headed by a bunch of never Trumpers, and there's a lot of controversy around them because it's headed by it's headed by George Conway, who we've talked about. His daughter Claudia Conway has thrown both of her parents to the wolves in terms of putting a bunch of stuff on TikTok and saying how crazy her parents are. But George Conway was a very conservative attorney for a long time, and he turned never Trumper, and Rick Wilson, and a bunch of other, Steve Schmidt, I think his name is, and a bunch of other conservatives spent about $70 million of attack ads against Trump and other conservatives. I think that they were pretty effective with their ads, but how do they actually do?
I mean, that's still to be determined, but if we're just looking at Republican voters, at least people who identify as Republicans didn't stray very much from Donald Trump, not in the sort of numbers you hope, but whether those ads mobilized people who were already against Trump who may not have voted otherwise, or they got independents who are really Republicans to at least vote against Trump because you saw the Republican Party did better than Trump this election.
Yeah, that actually is crazy because what you see is they actually kept the seats while Trump lost some of the same states where they maintained the seats. Okay, the grifters like Eric Trump and DJ TJ, how are they going to do going forward?
They're probably going to have a lot more legal problems.
Do you think that Trump is going to go to Biden and I know this is kind of like folklore, and I know that it's kind of like not as realistic as maybe we all think, but do you think there's a chance that he's waging this legal battle to sort of what a lot of people do in litigation, and we experience this all the time. A lot of times, like the best defense is a good offense, or if you want to get out of something, you go hard, you litigate super hard, and that's Trump is a litigious person, and he's been able to get out of things because of that. Do you think any part of him is thinking, I'm going to go hard and basically make it so impossible for the country to move on until Biden has to come to me and make some sort of deal where he basically gets out of legal trouble going forward?
I don't think Biden cares. I think Biden has enough of a mandate from the people who supported him not to fall victim to Trump's tactics. Trump doesn't have much leverage here.
That is interesting. Okay. So are our children and the future looking good as a result of Biden coming in?
The future is looking better than if Trump had won because
Why?
Because at least we see a win that keeps the arc of justice for issues like having a more multicultural and tolerant society moving forward, as opposed to having white nationalists like Stephen Miller working in the White House.
Why would we care about that?
I have no idea, but like Stephen Miller getting fired, very good thing.
Oh, God, a self-hating Jew, like no other. He is, and that's the other thing. I think that what I'm really excited for is I'm excited to see my Republican Trump friends, and I know it sounds crazy. I got a lot of them. I think what you're going to see is, yes, right now it hurts, it's painful, it's brutal. I know what that's like because we were on the other side of it 4 years ago. And I feel for them to an extent, but I'm excited for them because I think that after a few weeks, after a few months of this nation slowing down, calming down, I think that they're going to be appreciative of the change. And maybe that's a little bit of wishful thinking. What do you think?
I don't know what ends our current degree of polarization because on a personal level, my hope would be that the right would have lost the culture wars and we could have just been in a debate over economic policy for how we order our politics. But
meaning, like, you just wish that like many other countries, like the issues around like gay marriage and abortion and stuff like that, those issues would just be resolved and we were just dealing with economic issues.
Yes, as in like if the 2016 election had gone the other way, we would have a completely different Supreme Court. A lot of these issues would be totally off the table if we hadn't had the Merrick Garland fiasco. So unless there's some sort of court reform plan under this administration, depending on how the Senate races come out and depending on how the court acts in response to Democratic policies, then Trump's biggest consequence will be what he did to the courts.
Yeah. And then, AOC +3 plus the squad. So I think one of the challenges that Biden is going to have is that if they don't flip the Senate back to being a Democratic held Senate, actually, either way, whether he does or he doesn't, he's going to have the challenge of this internal strife that happens with the Democratic Party, where you have AOC +3 and Bernie on the one side, and you have more moderate Democrats on the other side. I think the one benefit that Joe Biden has is he's really like at the point where he doesn't really have to care. Like he really probably doesn't care about being a 2-term president. And so he kind of can just govern however the hell he wants to govern.
Right. He may actually decide not to run in 2024, depending on what the dynamics look like on a Democrat winning.
So what do you think the battle is going to be like, the internal battle, the Democratic battle between like the left and the sort of more moderate wings of the Democratic Party?
I think we'll only really see that play out if they have the Senate. Otherwise, what we'll see is bills that go through the House and then die in the Senate with Mitch McConnell, except to the extent you could get compromised. So you're taking deals that the progressives won't love if Mitch McConnell will go along with it. And you're looking at executive/regulatory action, which has nothing to do with the Congress. So that might wind up being more progressive, subject to what the court, a more conservative judiciary, does in response to progressive legislative or administrative and regulatory action.
Any other big winners or losers of this election?
I would say Trumpism is a winner, even though Trump's a loser.
Okay, but why? Because here's the thing. Okay, Trump got 7. I love how they say, like, they're very much touted. He loves numbers, loves ratings. He loves numbers. Everything, numbers, ratings. That's been all he's talked about for his entire career. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to spin this as this is the greatest amount of votes that ever has been received by an incumbent president. And he's received like 70 million votes, while ignoring the fact that Sleepy Joe, the person who he said would be the most embarrassing person to ever lose an election to, got like 4 or 5 million votes more than he did.
Yes, on the national election level, but as far as state by state goes, especially with the state legislatures and governor's mansions, that Trumpism and putting different faces on it, so the Republican Party basically became Trumpism. That did pretty damn well, even though Donald Trump lost.
What's interesting about the Georgia race, just to go back that for a second, I think that where the Georgia Republicans are going to have a hard time is they were boosted in part by the turnout that came out for Trump. Now that Trump's not going to be on the ballot in January, like how are they, like I think they're going to have a hard time with the turnout.
Right, because they're going to have to
Explain the turnout, explain what that means, what I just said, like the Georgia turnout issue.
So what the Democratic hope on this is that Republicans, without having Trump on the ballot, are going to have less motivation to go and vote in the January 5th runoff.
And if you don't have motivation to go vote, like you just did in the presidency, like the only reason, like a lot of people only cared about voting for the presidential election, so they go and they vote for Trump. And I'm here, so obviously I'm going to go vote for the Republican senator. But now that Trump is not on the ticket in these special elections, I don't have as much motivation to go vote. I'm not going to see the Republican senator. I'm not going to vote for it. So I think that's where the hope is for the Democrats.
That's one of the hopes, and I guess one of the greater concerns is how will the Republicans do with suburban voters without Trump being on the ballot? So they may have had greater issue with Trump than Trumpism or Republican policies. So they may very well vote for Republican Senate candidates that just wanted Trump gone.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so we're moving on to legal tip of the week. Smith & Benowitz, it's an employment, personal injury, and class action law firm. And Lou, give us just a good legal tip of the week to send us off into this new era of Joe Biden.
Keep an eye out for regulatory changes and executive actions in the workers' rights arena. So things being done by the Department of Labor, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and similar agencies may be quite worker-friendly because those are things that Biden can do immediately without needing Congress to do anything that would be consistent with the platform he ran on.
Yeah, and basically any and all legal questions regarding employment law or anything else, you can call us anytime. We're always happy to talk. And we are really, really excited to be moving on into this new administration with employee favorable regulation. So we're excited for it. Wrapping it up, what did we learn? We learned that even in the face of an attempted authoritarian dictator, what did we learn about the American people?
We learned that the American people, or at least a bare majority of them, stood up for democracy and voted to preserve democracy, even though there was a suboptimal candidate on the ballot in Joe Biden. He was nobody's first choice, but he's a man who is presidential, who we should be able to agree and for the most part, is a much more stable leader.
Yeah, stability. That's going to be nice. It's going to be so nice to not have to deal with the ups and downs of every single tweet. But look, let's just say what's real about Trump. What are we going to miss? What is the big loser of the election in terms of losing Trump? Entertainment. The guy was the most I'm sorry.
But he'll still be on TV and Twitter. You may remove the man from the office, but you'll never remove him from the press.
That's true. But, and this is tough because I don't like to use this word. It's a nasty word. We used it a little bit today, but he is the thing that he most hates, which is a loser. We will see you next week, Law Flip.
Law flip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down. Law flip, objection, Your Honor. Turn the game upside down.
Okay, so Ariane, they're asking where they could find us. So for Law Flip, it's at Law Flip and lawflip.com. For Smith & Benowitz, our law firm, which does personal injury, employment, and class actions, you can find us at Smith Benowitz and smithbenowitz.com. For the personal stuff, like where you're really going to find the juicy stuff, at Benji Smith and benjismith.com, at Wages Guru and lewisbenowitz.com for Lewis. Oh, so Law Flip is produced, directed, and edited by the young legend Ariane Tabibian. Visual effects and compositions by another young legend, Oren Azad. Intro music provided by Pen Practice. Pen Practice, what is it? Premium instrumentals for upcoming artists by the music industry's top producers. For more info, visit penpracticemusic.com. I had so much fun recording the intro song with my man Hilton Deuce Wright. Looking forward to hearing more and more from Pen Practice. So the Law Flip identity, this hot logo that you're looking at, created by Garrett Whiston and Travis Nagel. Special thank you to Shai and Seth from the Horwitz Marketing Agency. And lastly, this podcast is made available by Smith & Benowitz for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is only intended to provide general information and opinions about legal and other concepts, and is not intended to be used as a source of legal advice or relied on for legal advice. By listening to this podcast, you understand that no attorney-client relationship is being formed between you and Smith & Benowitz or any of its attorneys. This podcast should not be used as a substitute for competent legal advice from a licensed professional attorney in your state.